Welcome everybody to Thruxton and the Virtual Funcup series, the 5th round of this Virtual Funcup UK series, coming from one of the fastest racetracks in Great Britain, a circuit that always produces really close racing action. It's a firm favourite over here in the UK, but a circuit that has never played host before to Funcup racing, either in the real world or in the virtual one. So we're in for a real treat tonight as we make a bit of a voyage into the unknown here. We maybe a bit of a taster for some of the action that we'll get to see in a month or so's time when the real championship heads to the high-speed Hampshire circuit for its second event of the rescheduled 2020 season. Well, my name is Andy McEwan, delighted to be back with the Virtual Funcup series tonight. This is the third of the UK race nights that I've had the pleasure of being involved with, but someone who's been talking you all through literally all of the action, both in the Funcup UK virtual series and the European events as well, is Chris McCarthy. Chris, are you looking forward to this one?
Yes, most likely. It's going to be good. I mean, I'm surprised to hear Funcup's never gone to this track because, as you said in our preview, this is, if you designed a track for this car, it would pretty much look something like this. It's fast, very fast corners, hard to get away, two big overtaking points, and that's what you want in cars that are all the same. You want a track where if you're half a second slower, then you can stay in the fight, and that's another thing we were talking about earlier. It's all you've got to do is be within half a second here, and then once the lights go green, you're in the fight for the lead straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be the key. I think qualifying on pole position is nice, but I don't think it's going to win you the race tonight, or indeed either of the races, because it's a 2-race format that we're using tonight for the first time, I believe, in the UK Virtual Funcup series. So 2 30-minute races as opposed to the regular 1 60-minute race, with 35 points available for a race win. So they halve the points, but obviously over the night there is still 70-odd points available. And one of my favourite things in modern motorsport, a reversed grid second race. So the top 8 finishes from race 1 get reversed to form the grid for the second race of the night. So that should guarantee us some action. I mean,
after that, let's talk from Chris Hart onwards, as if that is our leader. Chris Hart is leading, and Richard Towler second, with Riley Phillips a very close third.
Yeah, kind of as we expected, although Chris Hart is sort of the interloper there, isn't he? He's not shown that kind of pace in recent races. I seem to remember him being quite competitive. At the test race we did all those weeks ago at Zandvoort, he was up there fighting Richard Towler for the win, but hasn't really been able to replicate that since. So maybe tonight is his night, and yeah, he's got the fastest sort of legitimate lap time, if you want to call it that. 3.5 seconds off Jay Shepherd's pace. Oh dear, Pierce stocked into the barriers very heavily coming out of the final chicane. He was 5th quickest, and at this rate he's going to stay 5th quickest until the end of the session. I'm interested, actually, Chris. Most of the drivers are in the pit lane right now, so a lot of people feel that they've probably done the best they can, so unlikely to see many changes. Shepherd and Hart the top 2, Towler and Phillips the top 2 in the championship, 3rd and 4th at the moment, with Pierce Stockton in 5th, Julian Thomas, David Denyer and John Tomlinson. Oh goody, the 3 identical Race Logic cars are going to start absolutely together on the grid in 6th, 7th and 8th. Can't wait to try and pick those 3 out into the first corner. John Eiley 9th, Chris Walton in 10th, Ben Trossel is 11th. Chris Wetherill, I believe, is Evolution C. Chris Wetherill from the Evolution team. I think that's where he got the name from. He's in 12th. And Stephen Fern in 13th at the moment, although he's a little way off the pace.
Yes. Is that Steve Walton? Stephen Fern? Or is that someone else?
I remember this driver was racing with us 2 weeks ago, but I'm afraid I've slept since then. So, yes. Oh, it is, I believe, yes. Well done.
Steve Walton.
Just ahead of Richard coming into this race. So really, the onus is on Richard, isn't it? He needs to try and beat Riley Phillips and really, Chris, avoid these early race problems that he's had. The last 2 races have kind of been over for him. At least his chances of winning the race have been over before the race really got underway. But now he's starting up there on the second row of the grid. He's ahead of his championship rival. A clean start for Richard, and he's got every chance here of beating Riley and taking some points out of him.
20 seconds to go anyway until race start.
Indeed, yeah, it's going to be an interesting run up to that first corner. Not so much the first corner, but the first breaking point up at Campbell Cobb and Seagrave. That's where things can sometimes go wrong. Let's hope everyone bears in mind that it is a 30-minute race. And with the effect of the slipstream around here, you don't need to lead into the complex for the first time to have a chance of winning. Let's see what happens then as the lights go out. Away they go. Start made by the front row men, although a slightly better start for the pole sitter Jay Shepherd, it must be said, than Chris Hart, who was alongside him. That allows Richard Towler to get up the inside of Hart for second place through Allards for the first time. They'll run wheel to wheel up the hill. Riley Phillips is bump drafting already, pushing Richard Towler up the hill. Towler in second. Phillips now tries to make it 3 wide on the inside, but sensibly bails out of that one. It's a clear lead for Shepherd into the complex for the first time. Towler goes second, and we watch from on high now as Riley Phillips and Pierce Stockton both tried to find a way past Chris Hart here before leaders escape. Riley's on the grass there. This is danger for the championship leader. Gets muscled out by Chris Hart there. He's still trying to fight his way alongside into Noble Corner. Up over the curbs for Riley Phillips. That was full commitment. He still can't get past Chris Hart, who hangs on just about to third place.
He could have done with a bit of a push there from Piers Stockton, but it looks like he might get the inside now as they come up to the final chicane. That said, Richard Towler has gone to the inside of Jay Shepherd as well. Riley trying to mirror that move now as they come to the fast right-hander. And there we go. Piers Stockton is going to give Riley Phillips a push. That's going to drop Chris Hart down to at least 5th here. Jay Shepherd didn't get a good run either, so he's going to be in trouble now as Riley Phillips pulls to the inside. Piers Stockton and Chris Hart all trying to go with him here as they come up to the chicane, but Piers Stockton, he's now going to go to the inside as well of Riley Phillips. That could put Riley on the back foot as Riley and Chris make contact. Chris Hart running over the chicane, and he's now going to run wide onto the grass as Phillips will go back through. All of this, though, is allowing Richard Towler to just escape a little bit out front as we complete lap 1.
But Piers Stockton started 5th. He's up to 2nd, so he's really looking racy at the start of this one. It's Riley Phillips that's struggling to get up to the leaders, isn't he? Goes round the outside of Chris Hart, into Campbell Corner. That puts him on the wrong line through Cobb, though, so he runs a bit wide. Finally, though, gets back in line going out of Seagrave. So we now do have arguably the 3 quickest drivers this weekend. Richard Towler, Piers Stockton and Riley Phillips running in the top 3 positions. Chris Hart, though, will look to go with Riley here and catch up to those top 2. And Julian Thomas likewise in 5th position. These top 5 just making a bit of a break now from David Denyer in 6th, Jay Shepherd 7th, John Tomlinson 8th, Steve Walton, got it right, in 9th, and Chris Wetherall rounding out the top 10. Side by side again, though, Chris Hart not so much working with Riley Phillips. He wants to get back into 3rd place, Chris.
He's been impatient here, Chris Hart. Wants to get back through. He wants to be the one doing the chasing rather than the one doing the pushing here. And Julian Thomas, this has just allowed him to get involved in this battle. This a really frustrating situation because really the prize is up ahead. You need to work together at this stage. And Riley Phillips will be hoping he can get a gap through here. But as we say that, Chris Hart wants the same thing as well. He wants to be the one with a gap as Riley running just a little bit wide out of the chicane. I don't think Chris Hart saw him there, thought there was more space on the outside. And Julian Thomas is now going to try and come back through as well. So things going from bad to worse as Riley getting all sideways. He's gone on the grass now. Julian Thomas is going to pass him. Jay Shepherd is in the background as well. I don't know if he's had to take a penalty or not, but he lays in the background. He's now going to try and throw one down the inside. Oh, Riley, there's contact there. Jay Shepherd going round. Riley Phillips just about able to carry on again, and John Tomlinson goes up to 6th place.
Hello. Well, I think Riley Phillips is finding out who his friends are tonight, isn't he? He has been beaten up left, right and centre since the start of this race. He's somehow still in 5th position, but he really should be up near the front of the field. We know he's one of the fastest drivers here tonight, but he just can't catch a break. Now, look at this. For the race lead, Piers Stockton, without any help from anybody else, has reeled in the race leader, Richard Towler, and tries to take the lead into Church Corner. That is not a traditional overtaking opportunity. This is the Fun Cup. You can overtake wherever the momentum takes you, it would seem, especially on a wide circuit like this one. He stays in line, though. We're on board now with Richard Towler, the race leader, looking back at Piers Stockton. He gives him a bit of a love tap at the top of the hill. Interestingly there, didn't try and pull out to overtake. as they approach the braking zone. So Stockton maybe intends to work with Towler here, but they've both been reeled in by a resurgent Chris Hart, who gets a mega run out of the chicane and now attacks Stockton for second place. Side by side across the line then, Towler starts to pull clear of a side-by-side battle behind him. Chris Hart goes through on the inside, but Stockton, I'm sure, is going to try and fight back as soon as he can.
When we saw Chris Hart just a little bit earlier in the race fighting as hard as he was with Riley Phillips, you can see why that was, because he's confident he's able to go on and win this race now. So that's one down. He's got one more to go. In the background, it'd be interesting to see what's going on in the battle for fourth, because Julian Thomas and Riley Phillips are very close together. Riley Phillips wants to either work with Julian here or be the one that's getting pushed along. He, of course, qualifying, feels he's the quicker one to try and lead the chase here up to the lead three, who could be all one very shortly, as here we come now through the very fast section of corners at Thruxton, and it's probably not going to be until the chicane that Riley can make his move. In the meantime, he's doing the best thing here by just pushing Julian Thomas along. There you can see, couldn't be any closer. This great view looking back from Julian Thomas. Riley Phillips pushing him all the way up. So Thomas there, we're on board with. Phillips behind. Is now there going to be a move from Riley going into the chicane? Let's have a look. No, there isn't. So he's going to stay behind Julian Thomas there, who, as you said in qualifying, Andy, arrived at the chicane a little bit quicker than expected. And he now runs wide, and that's going to be Riley through into fourth place.
They gained about 0.6 of a second on Piers Stockton in front of them, just between Church Corner and the braking zone for the club chicane. That was all because of the bump drafting they were doing. Two cars working together, NASCAR style, will be quicker than one car on its own, especially since Piers Stockton has fallen out of slipstreaming range now from Richard Towler and Chris Hart, the top two. So they were going so much faster than the cars in front, but of course that means you then have to brake a bit earlier. If you're Julian Thomas and you've got Riley Phillips quite literally pushing you up the hill, don't want to hit the brakes when he's right behind you, because then he's going to run into you properly and you're both going to end up off the road. So for Julian, he kind of had to wait for Riley to detach from him before he could hit the brakes. And I think that's why he overshot the corner. Speaking of overshooting, Chris Walton there taking an advantage of a mistake for Chris Wetherill, who has dropped down to 10th place after making a bit of a mistake at the chicane. But Chris Walton in 9th, he's about 13, nearly 14 seconds behind the, call them the lead pack, because the 8 cars are all only about 5 seconds or so apart from each other. And the 10th place cars further back kind of having a race of their own. Side by side for second though, Chris, and it looks as though Piers Stockton, having lost time to the leaders on the previous lap, has somehow found his way back into second place.
Now we are looking back from Piers Stockton. Chris Hart has shown in this race that he's not keen to work together at times. Let's see if he repeats that, or if he is now going to see that they're going to have to work together. And there we go. That's good driving now from Chris Hart, who has chosen to battle at times, but at this time he's choosing to work together, as almost seemed that Piers was going to get turned around there. They've got a 3.7 second gap to chase, and they've only got 22 minutes to do it. So they really, really need to start working together here. Otherwise, this race is going to be done in about 5 minutes' time, because as you can see, look how much time they are losing, Andy. They have lost about a second in just those few corners. But Chris Hart, I don't think we're going to be seeing much more of him at the front. He spun round and he's dropping down the order now. That's him going to be down to at least 5th place. Jay Shepherd just trying to go past him as well. That's going to drop him down to 7th now. So a real shame that for Chris Hart, because he was having a fantastic race up at the front, but he has now been turned around and is in danger of dropping down to 8th place, which would be a reverse grid pole for race 2.
Yes, and I'm sure Chris has reminded himself about that. He'll be disappointed, no doubt, to have fallen out of the lead pack, but if he can start at the front for race 2, then that might be another chance for him to fight for a race win. He's going to try and keep David Denyer at bay, though. Denyer goes around the outside through Church Corner. That takes some commitment. Catches a bit of a slipstream maybe from Jay Shepherd up the road. Jay is just about a second in front of these two, so they should be getting a bit of a draft. Hart's got the inside line for the chicane. They're almost leaning on each other here. Oh, you can't really go side by side through here, and that's why Chris Hart is definitely in 8th place now, because he's pointing the wrong way in the middle of the club chicane. It's pointed back the right way. They were far enough ahead of Chris Walton that he shouldn't lose any more places, but that was quite predictable. You could kind of see that bit of contact coming, and indeed it did happen. So Chris Hart takes himself well and truly out of contention now. He's 8 seconds behind David Denyer, down in 8th position. This, though, is the fight for second. Now, that gap between Towler and Stockton was about 5.5 seconds a lap ago. It's already coming down, Chris, and we're seeing graphically here why that is, because Riley Phillips is stuck like glue to the rear bodywork of Pierce Stockton's car, and look at that gap between first and second start to shrink rapidly as a result.
Well, let's see. You pointed out last time how the gap came down by 0.6 when they were just coming up to this section of the circuit last time. So look at the top left, that's the gap. We're on board with Riley, so we can clearly see it's going to be pushing Pierce Stockton along. And here we go, 4.6 seconds at the moment. We'll see it come down now. It's 4.5 seconds. Any second now, there it is, 4.4 seconds, 4.3 seconds. Now it's down to 4.2 seconds, and now they break. So there you go. What was that? About 6 or 7 tenths in one straight. Chase is on
for 5th position, and Jay Shepherd on a good lap here. Look at his delta, 7 tenths up on his previous best as he goes through Church Corner, and now he gets the benefit of the slipstream. He's going to push John Tomlinson, though, and then sells him the dummy, pulls to the right-hand side. As soon as you pull out, Chris, you hit that wall of air, and all of a sudden you're going no quicker. You really need to time it right. He does it better the second time, outbrakes himself, though, very, very heavily into the chicane, just about gets it pulled up. He might be slow on the exit, though, and that could give Tomlinson a chance to fight back.
Well, that's going to be Tomlinson now who get it right in the end. But Tomlinson, all he has to do is stay with him up until they get out of that second chicane, because out of this corner they're coming up to, if he's with him there, then he has a choice to make. Does he push Jay Shepherd along, or does he go for the overtake? So it's gonna put him in an interesting situation. That is a battle. That isn't a battle for position going on up ahead. Oh, there's John Tomlinson going there. Sorry, he's decided to go and explore some of the off track, some parts of the track you would never usually go to. But John Tomlinson found them just fine. This is going to be the driver who's going to be on the reverse grid pole so far, Chris Hart. He is 7.5 seconds back from David Denyer. So you'd have to say, looking ahead to the second race, he is the favourite for that one now, because he's going to be on pole. And as long as he gets a clean start, he will be disappearing off into the distance with the pace he's been showing.
Let Piers back through and start pushing him along, because they were catching Towler, weren't they? They got that gap down under 4 seconds. It's now back out to 5.5, which is what it was about 10 minutes ago. So that was kind of 10 minutes wasted, really, where they were no longer catching the race leaders. And now with Riley Phillips back behind Piers Stockton, maybe they can close in on Towler. They've got to get past this back marker first, though. That is Chris Wetherill that they duck up the inside of into Church Corner. And another example there of how the bump draft can go wrong, because wide goes Piers Stockton. Phillips is going to have to back off. Oh, no, contact with the back marker. They're all off. Well, look at that. That did not go to plan, did it? Piers Stockton's on his way to Andover. I think he's that far off the circuit. I don't know where Riley Phillips ended up. And poor Chris Wetherill was kind of an innocent bystander in all of that. Stockton is still showing a second. He's fighting his way back on the track. He'll get there in about half an hour. Here comes Julian Thomas, who could get himself onto the podium. He has. He's got past Riley Phillips. He's got the momentum to catch Piers Stockton. Well, Chris, I don't think they're going to catch Richard Towler anymore, but we are on for an almighty fight for the lower podium places. Now, that, though, was not pretty.
It seemed to me, and yeah, I'm sure Andrews sat next to Riley will be able to correct me, but it seemed to me that Riley Phillips was trying to get back in behind Piers Stockton. As he came across to get him back behind the toe, he kind of was maybe a slight error of judgment. He didn't quite see that there was a car still there, and as he came back across, tipped him back round, and unfortunately, the back marker then it all kicked off, and Piers Stockton, as you said, picked up his passport and he went on a trip somewhere else. So. Yeah, I'm not too sure exactly what happened, but enough of that, because this is a battle for second that is now kicking off. Julian Thomas never expected to get this opportunity, but this would be his best result of the season if he can get past Piers Stockton, I think.
Yes, it would, I think. Julian Thomas, I think third was his previous best back at Alton Park. So, yeah, he's on course for his best, but if he can get past Piers Stockton, he could beat it.
Oh, and well, all he has to do is be patient here, because it's not until the end of the race, really, he wants to make this move. But don't forget, Riley Phillips is going to come into play as well. So that said, go back on what I just said, you want to be the one leading, really, when there's three cars in the fray. So I'd say Julian Thomas is going to be eager to get past as quickly as possible if he can. Piers Stockton is now going to have two cars to deal with eventually here, because he's defending. Riley Phillips has gone from being 1.4 seconds back to, nothing now. You can see he's right behind Julian Thomas, and Piers Stockton has a gap. Now, what does Julian Thomas do now? Does he let Riley Phillips go, or does he try and defend this all the way to the flag?
Well, he didn't have a good run through the first corner there, Julian, did he? And well, dearie me. That was fairly robust, wasn't it? I don't think that was intentional for Riley. I think he just missed his braking point, or maybe Julian was braking early to let Riley through, and Riley kind of ended up driving through him rather than past him. But let's see. No, Julian's going to go back through again. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, he's lifted off, hasn't he? The lap time delta going up. So Riley realised that wasn't textbook overtake, and Julian Thomas is back through into third, but look at the time that's cost them now. They're 1.8 seconds behind Piers Stockton now, with only 7.5 minutes to go.
Oh, he's going to push him now. Riley's going to push Julian Thomas all the way up to the braking point at least. Here we go. Bang, there you go. So he's going to push him now, and the gap's going to come down, isn't it? So it's 1.7. Let's see what it comes down to by the time they get up to the braking point. It's now 1.6. It will just keep coming down. They've gained 0.6 down the straight doing this, and now they're going to gain at least half a second, about half a second now as they hit the brakes. So now the chase is on for Riley to try and catch back up to Piers once again, but 21 seconds is just a bit of a healthy advantage for Richard Towler, who has only 7 minutes until he sees the checkered flag. There's also a good battle going on in David Denyer and John Tomlinson as well for 5th place. So, what's happened there? Is that the back marker again, who's
Chris,
been involved?
Isn't it?
It's Weatherall again, who's been involved with a bit of action. So, and there you can see there is the gap. So, John Tomlinson is what 1.1 seconds looks like. Chris Hart in the background is closing in even quicker as well. So, Chris Hart, he'll want to get by John Tomlinson as quickly as possible.
Freeman retaking him again. So this is going to be an interesting battle. Here comes Chris Hart. Meanwhile, speaking of interesting battles, he's taken 6th away from John Tomlinson, and he's only 1.25 seconds or so, less than that now, behind David Denyer. So if Tomlinson's any sense here, he'll grab hold of that rear wing of Chris Hart's car, get himself dragged up to the back of his teammate, and then all three of them can settle it over the final couple of laps. Let's see if that's the plan. Does he pull in behind Chris Hart and push him? Yes, he does. That bump draft back in effect, and look at the way that they start reeling in David Denyer as a result. We're going to have a battle for second here going right down to the wire, and probably a three-way fight for 5th. So this race, in true Funcup fashion, even though it's been a shorter race than we're used to, it really is coming alive again in the final few minutes.
Oh, well, there's been a mistake from John Tomlinson there. And Chris Hart is going to sweep past Denyer, I don't think. Bit of contact there as well. So Chris Hart arriving on the inside of David Denyer when he didn't expect it. And Chris Hart has gone through. So that is a change for 5th place. So considering he was facing the wrong way at one stage in this race, he's not done too bad. Now it's down to David Denyer. If he gets a chance, David Denyer's going to have to try and go for a move straight away. Let's quickly check in with the battle for second, though, because the gap has come down to virtually nothing. What is Riley Phillips going to do? Is he going to go for a move here for the first time on Piers Stockton? Yes, he is. He's pulled to the outside now, as side-by-side through here is never a good idea, but both giving each other a lot of room. That's, of course, where the incident happened earlier, and Riley Phillips deciding to push Piers Stockton up the hill. Is he going to move to the inside as they hit the brakes? Yes, he does. And Riley Phillips is going to go into 2nd place. So he will be the one leading the way as they come across the line into the final 2.5 minutes.
Makes a mistake though coming out of the chicane. Stockton might get back alongside. No, he can't quite get there, but Riley's got that move sussed, hasn't he? Did exactly the same thing to Julian. He works with the car in front until they get about halfway up the hill, pushes them along, and then just as they get to the braking zone, fakes them out and dives to the inside. And that's what you've got to do if you want to overtake, though, around Thruxton. You've got to be ruthless. You work with people when it suits you, but then when you get a chance to get past them, you have to kind of take that chance when it comes. And Riley, a good recovery this back into second place. In fairness, he's lost out on the chance to win the race, but second is still a good result. He's only going to drop about 5 points or so to Richard Towler, so that gap's going to come back into single figures again, more than likely, between the two of them. So Richard, I think, is about to go on to the final lap of the race. The one bit of information we don't, or I don't have at least, is who's got the fastest lap, because that's worth bonus point, of course, for fastest lap. It would normally be 2 points, but with this being half point race, I'd imagine it's just the one bonus point. But that would be valuable for both of our championship contenders as well. Given how tight it is, wouldn't be at all surprised to see those bonus points for fastest lap really come into play come the end of the season.
Oh, you wouldn't think it'd be Richard because he's been on his own most of the race, but it might be. Yeah, it's just down to whether when he did have a tow, whether he set a fastest lap. But here we go, battle for second. Piers Stockton returning the favour going into the final corner. And he's now gone back into second place, but runs wide on the exit. And Riley Phillips is now going to be side by side as they come down the start-finish straight for what could be the final time in this race. So they're virtually side by side through turn one. Riley Phillips just gets back ahead. Stockton surely he's going to try and move now as they come into the first braking zone of the lap, but decides to sit in behind. So he might wait here until the final corner, Piers Stockton. That's when you get the biggest tow. So he may feel comfortable waiting for that final set of corners, Andy.
Well, yeah, maybe. If you can stay with Riley through the next sort of half a lap, then Riley, in theory, could be a sitting duck going up the hill. But we've seen how good Phillips is the brakes up at the club chicane, so even if Stockton can draft alongside him, there's nothing to say that he would win the battle of the late breakers into the final couple of corners. This will be the final lap of the race, though. The time is about to tick down to 0. Richard Towler is on his way into the final chicane, so it's going to be a third victory of the season, this, for Richard Towler. His first one since round 2, though. He's had a bit of bad luck in the last couple of races, lost him the championship lead, but this is a good way to bounce back. He wins the first race at Thruxton for the Virtual Funcup UK series, and he wins it by a comfortable margin. It's going to be about 25 seconds, but over who? Will it be Riley Phillips or Piers Stockton? I don't think Stockton's going to get quite close enough. He looks to the inside, but he's too far back. Riley Phillips, provided he doesn't make any mistakes through the chicane, should come home in second place. That was a real fighting drive for Riley, given how much he got roughed up in the early stages, but he does come through and take second place. Third place for Piers Stockton, and Chris Hart is going to come home fourth. That was another good recovery drive, wasn't it, Chris? Because Chris Hart quite a few moments in that race, so to come home fourth is not a bad job.
And he did it on the last lap as well. It's got to say, there must have been a mistake because I didn't see that he was closing in on Julian Thomas. So Chris Hart, a fantastic recovery there to finish fourth. Julian Thomas will be fifth, David Denyer sixth, John Tomlinson in seventh, and Chris Walton, who we are looking at now, will be the reverse grid opposition going into race 2 as he finishes 8th. John Eiley 9th, Ben Trossel 10th, Chris Wetherall in 11th, Steve Walton in 12th, and Jay Shepherd, unfortunately, a problem for him midway through the race sees him finishing in 13th place. A brilliant race to kick us off.
On pole position is Chris Walton, who just wants to try and survive the opening few corners of the race. The 10-second countdown then begins, Chris. The rev's starting to rise. Race 2 just a few moments away.
Yep, here we go then. Chris Walton on pole position for the reverse grid second race at Thruxton. And we are away for the second time of round 5. I can already see Riley Phillips has got to the inside of Piers Stockton. So he has made one place straight away. The 3 Race Logic cars all together. But Chris Walton is the one that is going to lead them the first corner for the first time. There might be some side-by-side action here as John Tomlinson tries to go down the inside of Chris Walton, and he's through. Chris Hart on the attack as well, barges his way into third place. Piers Stockton trying to get down the middle of two of the Race Logic cars, and Richard Towler is picking up the pieces. He's got up to fifth place. Now he's on the grass as Piers Stockton and Riley Phillips are once again pushing each other along here as they are now fighting with Richard Towler. There we can see David Denyer. He is up into fourth place, but a good start from John Tomlinson, who now has Chris Walton breathers down his neck. The pole position driver will want to get back into the lead now. Chris Hart not too far behind as well. He is only around 8/10 behind these guys. So who is going to be the leader when we get to the chicane for the first time? It's going to be John Tomlinson, but will Chris Walton go on the attack as they're now into the straight? And Chris Walton, is he going to try and push Tomlinson along? He isn't. He pulls to the inside, and Chris Walton now grabs his race lead back as we're about to complete the first lap. Behind it's all chaos as well. I can see as we look a little bit further back, you can see Chris Hart going off the curb there. He might make contact here.
Oh, no.
He is, and he's tagged. There's Moulton's gone round as well. It's chaos out there, Andy.
Walton was having his own moment, I think, and he was up against the pit wall going very slowly, then all of a sudden got assaulted by an out-of-control Chris Hart. I'm not entirely sure how those two cars ended up hitting each other there, but the end result is that John Tomlinson now leads the way, Piers Stockton is second, and they're the top two in the championship. Riley Phillips third and Richard Towler fourth, with Julian Thomas right behind him in fifth place. So a very dramatic start to our second race of the evening. We kind of thought that might be the case. And, well, at least our championship contenders have got through it all without too much strife. But I think there were three abreast, weren't they, going into the chicane? I think that's kind of how it started. And that doesn't often work into that final chicane at Thruxton. And indeed, in this case, it was Chris Hart that ended up cutting through. But John Tomlinson then got in front. Now, if these three start fighting each other behind, Tomlinson could do a Towler, couldn't he? He could break the toe and pull clear of them, but we know that these two drivers, well, not these two, the two that were on screen when I started that sentence, Riley Phillips and Piers Stockton, are very good at working together, so I don't think Tomlinson is going to have it all his own way here.
It's what Richard Towler wants to do as well. I think he'll decide to sit in behind, but they are pushing each other along. Riley Phillips pushing Piers Stockton, and that's just how quickly a gap can close down. He's on board with Richard Towler, as we can see up ahead. Piers Stockton has got it all wrong, though. You've given too much of a push, but as he comes back onto the track, contact is made with Richard Towler, and that's going to delay the pair of them on the exit. That's going to allow Riley Phillips and John Tomlinson to get away. Richard Towler now under attack from Julian Thomas and David Denyer.
Well, we had three different leaders in one corner then. We had Tomlinson led going into the chicane, then Stockton took the lead and ran wide, and then Riley Phillips led coming out of the chicane. So that doesn't get more funk up than that, does it really? Towler is the one that's getting beaten up at the start of this one a bit like we saw from Riley Phillips in race one. But all of this squabbling is just keeping the whole pack together. Look at them all streaming past. We've got the top 7 cars all in a line here, really, haven't we? Phillips leading the way, Tomlinson at second, Stockton third, Towler fourth, Denyer fifth, Thomas sixth, and Eiley in seventh place. And Chris Hart is only 3.5 seconds behind them. So Chris Hart could still be a factor in this one. We've still got 26 minutes to go, remember, and he's almost back on the tail of this lead group. So Tomlinson out on the grass there, coming out a good one. That is not going to help your lap time or your speed into Church Corner. But yeah, don't count Chris Hart out of this. He's closing in already on this lap. He could be with this lead pack within a lap or so.
And that's really hurt John Tomlinson now, because he's lost the toe from Riley, and now he's giving the toe to drivers who are working together. So just like he was a lap ago, if we go back to him, you'll see he's about to come under attack as once again they're trying to go 3 wide. Stockton, I don't know if that was a defense on Towler or an attack on Tomlinson or a bit of both, but he's going to stay third coming out of the final corner briefly, and then Richard Towler is going to go past him. So Towler is now into third, Tomlinson in second, and Riley Phillips has done what Richard Towler has done in the first race, and he has broken away out front. Now it's about trying to make the most of his gap, but he's catching Chris Wetherill, and we know what happened in the last race when he went to lap Chris Wetherill. It all went wrong. So he'll be perhaps a little bit nervous at this stage, and there you can see the car just getting a little bit out of the shape now. But He coming up to the first back marker of the race and is leaving a furious battle behind for second place. There we can see a great angle.
Tell you what, Riley Phillips is going to catch Chris Wetherill at exactly the part of the track where they clashed in the first race, just going out of Church Corner. Thankfully, it's a bit less busy for Riley at the moment, though. He should be able to pick his moments a bit more. We're on board here with John Eiley in 7th, taking quite a lot of the curb through Church Corner. Wouldn't recommend he tries that in a few weeks' time when we're at Thruxton for real. Will almost certainly send the car out into the field on the left-hand side of the road. Up the hill they go, though. He's got David Denyer and Julian Thomas working together as what's going on? Riley Phillips. Yeah, John Tomlinson's second. I saw something change then. Yeah, John Tomlinson's just gone second for Richard Taylor. There's contact, and Tomlinson off into the barriers. And well, that was unfortunate. I don't think it was intentional for Towley. He was trying to get the good exit, wasn't he? But this, Chris, is a real example of how not to work together. They can't organise themselves, this big group of cars. They're all fighting to be at the front of the queue, and Riley Phillips is loving every second of it. He's in the process. Oh, I don't believe it. They made contact again. Chris Wetherill and Riley Phillips just can't get away from each other today. Wetherill's on the grass. Phillips has gone through, but look at the time. It lost him about 3/4 of a second, that bit of contact, and suddenly Richard Towler could get back to him.
Denier's off in the background as well. Oh no, Chris Wetherill's just been shoved out of the way now, hasn't he? And Denyer spun in the background. You may have caught that as well. He was having his own moment through all of that. He's now dropped out of the tow in 7th, but Chris Hart has got himself back in the fight effectively because he's only 3 seconds away from the race leader roughly. So Chris Hart is doing a fantastic job here to close these guys back in. Phillips was in a comfortable lead, but now Towler has got through. That lead is not looking so comfortable anymore. Julian Thomas, what's his plan here with Piers Stockton? Is he going to push him along, or is he going to go for a move? He's going to do the latter, isn't he? He's going to go for a move here, because if he looks in his mirrors, guess who's there? It's Chris Hart. Chris Hart has made his moves very quickly in this so far this evening when he's had to. Back Piers Stockton. I don't think we've talked enough about John Eiley, but he's doing a great job in this race to keep up with these guys. Didn't get the best of runs through the last chicane, but he's very much in this fight as Chris Hart goes through into 4th place. So he is now the next driver who is going to be on the attack for the top 3, and the first driver he's going to catch is going to be Piers Stockton.
It is John Eiley. We're following him now from behind the car and heading through Noble. You can really see the way the car moves around, actually, from this angle, rocking on the suspension through Goodwood, back down towards Church Corner, weaves to the right-hand side of the road there, just to take the shortest possible line, because it's not really a straight. There is no such thing as a straight at Thruxton, and the bits between the corners tend to turn one way or the other, so you've got to be mindful of what line you're taking at all times. Side by side here up the hill, though, between Chris Hart and Julian Thomas. This is for 4th place. I think Hart has already gone through, and Julian is trying to fight back up the inside of the 106 car now. Onto the brakes, late on the brakes, though, for Chris Hart. Now, that's the line that he takes through the chicane. Even bother with the middle part of the club chicane, and that has 2 effects. It not only speeds him up through the corner, but look at the extra speed that he can carry across the start-finish line. It's not remotely legal, but it's working really well, and it means that he's almost in the middle now, this gap, isn't he, between Piers Stockton and Julian Thomas. Yeah, this is really impressive from Richard Towler. Riley spent the entirety of race 1 trying to work with different people, working with Piers Stockton, working with Julian Thomas, working with Chris Hart, trying to catch the leader, Richard Towler, and wasn't able to get there. Richard, though, in the space of about 5 minutes, has done it all on his own. So that's really impressive from Richard. And now that he's caught Riley, might actually elect to just sit behind him and work with him for a few laps, because they're continuing to lap quicker than Stockton behind. That gap is now 3.5 seconds between 2nd and 3rd. The bigger they can make that gap, the less they have to worry about being caught by 3rd place later on when they start to really fight over the race lead.
Yeah, this is there's 3 main battles going on in this race, isn't there? There's this one, there's the one for 3rd, and then there's a good battle between Tomlinson and Trossel as well. But Richard's decision is to go for this now. He wants to get past Riley Phillips ASAP, so go for a move up here, I'm sure. Hart is the next one who is trying to chase Stockton. This is a 3-way battle, really, because Julian Thomas involved in that one as well. But this is the main one now. This will do is if Riley is forced to defend, and it just allows those guys behind to maybe close in. So these guys, although they're going to be fighting, and it's going to be Richard Towler who's going to briefly go through, and he's going to take the lead. Riley Phillips still there on the outside there, though, but he's going to be on the outside going into the next corner. They come up into the braking zone, and Riley Phillips is going to hold it around the outside. Brilliant driving there. Good driving between the pair of them, giving each other enough space. And this, you're just going to see the gap coming down. Look, it's now under 3 seconds. So it's come down by over a second in half a lap, Andy.
Yeah, exactly, because you can't run side by side through the corners as quickly as you would do single file, and they're still side by side. They've done almost a whole lap now, wheel to wheel, and of course, because it's very much a left-right circuit, this one, particularly through the first half of it, the inside for one corner quickly becomes the outside for the next, and no one can break clear. But yeah, you're right, less than 3 seconds now between these two and the third and fourth place cars of Pierce Stockton and Chris Hart. Side by side into Church Corner they go, and finally Towler goes through, but then he runs wide, and an absolutely inch-perfect switchback manoeuvre there from Riley Phillips to get back up the inside again now up Woodham Hill. So it has now been a full lap of wheel-to-wheel racing through around the high-speed Thruxton circuit, and still neither of them wanting to relinquish the lead. Phillips gets into the chicane ahead, though. That inside line is the place to be going into the corner, but he might be slow again on the exit.
I tell you what, if Chris Hart was pushing Pierce Stockton along in this lap, that gap would be under 2 seconds now. But as it is just over 2 seconds. But I wonder if they're going to keep doing this. Chris Hart, he's going to have a decision to make as well when he catches Stockton. But yes, they're still going to keep fighting. So exactly what Stockton wants to see. He's got Chris Hart coming down the inside of him in the background as Chris Hart has gone into third place. But the two leaders, it's just a replay, isn't it, Andy, of what we saw on the last lap?
This is the kind of racing this circuit produces, though, because it's all about that momentum. If you go past somebody on the inside going into a corner, you're going to be slow on the exit. And I mean, they've lost another full second over the last lap or so. They're still side by side. It's brilliant racecraft, isn't it, though? They haven't once touching wood, because that could all change very quickly if they get a bit too close here through the high-speed sections. But at the moment, they haven't touched. Into third place, look, Chris Hart is ahead of Pierce Stockton now, and he's almost 2 seconds behind them, so he's definitely reeling them in. Hart could be a factor for the race lead before too much longer. Richard Towler up the inside again through Church. Each driver must believe that they are quicker than the other and that they should be in front, but they need to try and sort this out quickly. Riley Phillips in front. Towler pulls back behind him for of a second or so to get the slipstream, and then he's back up the inside, and this time Towler then will have the inside line into the chicane. Can he break as late as Riley Phillips? No, Phillips goes right on the outside this time to retain the race lead, cuts the corner a bit. They're going to really hold each other up, and we know how quick Chris Hart is through the chicane. Look at that, he's almost with them now.
I tell you what, if anyone's wondering why are they doing this, they're fighting for a championship, aren't they? It's down to single digits now in terms of points, isn't it? It's less than 10 points between these guys. And this is a full-on championship fight. And there you can see Chris Hart get on with it, Piers, to get after these guys, because they can almost reach out and touch them virtually now, can't they? Like, they're still side by side, Riley Phillips and Richard Towler, as Richard Towler almost running onto the grass there. Riley Phillips has got back in behind him now, and four are now all becoming one for the race lead here. And a flash of the lights there for Riley Phillips, who I think that's a signal is, okay, you win, get on with it now, because we've got Stockton and Chris Hart right behind us. But just over 10 minutes to go, Andy, and all four cars are one as they come up towards Church.
Riley Phillips has taken a look in his wing mirror, seen Pierce Stockton and Chris Hart arriving, and thought, maybe we should work together again here to try and get away from them. I mean, we could have told him that about 3 laps ago when they started going side by side. It was great entertainment, but look at the way that the others have caught. And Pierce Stockton is not going to hang around here. He's going to get a nice slipstream up the hill. There's contact there between Phillips and Towler as Phillips tries to push his championship rival up the hill. Interestingly, Pierce Stockton was not able to get up the inside. Now he does dive to the inside of Riley. They all run out wide on the entry, and Phillips was never going to stop the car that time. Now he cut the chicane, but backs off to make sure that he doesn't gain an advantage, even though it means he's going to give away not 1 but 2 places, because through into second goes Stockton, through into third goes Chris Hart. That was sportsman-like stuff, though, from Riley Phillips. He can afford to do it because he knows that with the power of the tow around this place, he'll get back to the leaders in no time, but Stockton's off. There was contact between Stockton and Hart, and now all of a sudden, Pierce Stockton's back down to 4th instead. It's all going on.
How much has it changed? I mean, a lap ago, this looks so much different, didn't it? Richard Towler has got himself a lead, so Riley Phillips needs to work with Chris Hart, and they need to do it on this lap. Otherwise, Richard Towler is once again this evening be off into the distance. So let's see if Riley Phillips is now going to work with Towler. He was in the lead of this race only a couple of laps ago. Now he is in third place and he's 1.5 seconds back from Towler, but he's not going to do it. He's going to go up the inside of Chris Hart. He's the quicker one to do this. Chris Hart is now going to be the one surely to try and push him up the hill. Let's see as they go up the hill. Chris Hart needs to just run onto the grass a little bit there, and there we go. They are seemingly working together, or are they? No, Chris Hart pulls out of the slipstream and he's going to dive back down the inside. So they've got to make their minds up. Who's going to do the leading and who's going to do the pushing? And from the next lap, they need to start doing that, really.
I know Chris Hart quite well, and I could have told Riley again there going onto the straight that there was no way, month of Sundays, that Chris Hart was going to push him up the hill. That's just not the way Chris Hart operates. He's in it for himself. He will want to overtake. As soon as a car appears in front of him, Chris Hart wants to get past it, and I think really Riley's best chance would have been to stay with Chris, because look at the way that Hart has now caught Richard Towler, thanks to that unique line of his that he takes through the final chicane, shall we say. He's on the tail of the leader, and he's pulled away from Riley by over half a second now. So all of a sudden, it's Hart versus Towler for the lead, Phillips versus Stockton for third.
For sixth place between Eiley and Denyer. I'm sure this is another one that could go to the flag. And Eiley was in seventh place earlier and had a 2-second gap to the pack. So he's done the, I think, the catching and the passing in this battle so far, but there is still 10 minutes remaining.
Drive this from John Eiley, isn't he? He finished 9th in race 1, so he didn't benefit from the reversed grid process. He missed out by 1 position, and yet he's driven his way up into 7th place already. Sorry, 6th place, excuse me, in this one. So John Eiley driving well. Back to the lead bunch again now. Then Towler to Hart is half a second, and then a further 1.4 back to Phillips and Stockton. Now, this is the hang on. To Stockton, is he disconnected or something? What happened there, Chris?
He's pulling off, isn't he? I'm not too sure what's gone on. Stockton has an important phone call to make, clearly, but he's just pulled off the circuit. Now, if it was a disconnection, I think he would just disappear. But I think his PC has crashed, we're being told. So, oh dear, that's a real shame. That's basically his engine's given up on him, essentially.
That's a real shame for Piers then. So he's out of the race. That promotes Julian Thomas to 4th, albeit 6.4 seconds behind the leaders. John Eiley 5th, David Denyer 6th, John Tomlinson 7th, Ben Trossel 8th, Stephen Walton, I'll remember it at some point, 9th place, and Chris Walton in 10th position right now with Piers Stockton out of the race. So John Eiley's now into 5th position. Now, what's John Eiley's best result of the season? He scored 52 points in rounds 2 and 4. So if I go to my spreadsheet, 52 points is 7th. So he's had 2 7th place finishes as his best results of the season so far. So he is on for his best finish, even if he allowed this man David Denyer through. But I don't think he will allow him through. Chris Hart, I believe it has been noted that he's been using his own unique line through that chicane, and second place might or might not stand at the end of the day, I'm told.
Let's have a look. Let's watch him go through. There you go. That's it. That second part. And
textbook line there.
Jason Plato line. And now call it. Does that leave him? Where you closed him by 4 tenths. So he's going to be 8 tenths behind. And this is the final lap, I think. So only a lap to go now. And I don't think Tart is going to be close enough to take what would be a provisional victory. Richard Towler, how well has he done this evening? 2 races where he's been able to get out front and done the hardest thing when you get there is staying there and building a gap. It's very hard to do that round here. You weren't sure if anyone was going to be able to do it, but Richard Towler has done it twice very well.
Yeah, absolutely. And made no mistakes either. We were a bit critical of him at Brands Hatch. Not critical, but, we he noticed that he made a couple of mistakes, didn't he? He kind of threw away that Brands Hatch race at the start of the second lap, getting tangled up with another car into the Hill Bend, going through the gravel trap, but no mistakes whatsoever tonight. He has not put a wheel wrong, and any moments that he has had, he's got to bounce back from really quickly. David Denyer there, still running solidly in sixth position, but the race leaders are heading towards the end of their final lap of racing. Ben Trossel there goes across the start-finish line to start his final lap of racing. Here comes Richard Towler. Well, I think unless Chris Hart completely abandons the final chicane, he's not going to get there. It is going to be a double race victory here at Thruxton for Richard Towler, and he will only be a couple of points now behind Riley Phillips in the championship, because, of course, Hart splits them, provisionally at least, in second place with Riley in third. Julian Thomas will come home in a fairly lonely fourth place, actually, with John Eiley in fifth position. Yeah, he's going to get the better of David Denyer, I think, isn't he? There is John Eiley taking the Chris Hart / Jason Plato line through the final chicane, with David Denyer sixth. John Tomlinson should be seventh, with Ben Trossel in eighth, gets a top 10. Chris Walton ninth, and Steve Walton should round out the top 10. So entertaining stuff there. It was a shame that we lost Piers Stockton midway through, there wasn't it? Because I think he would have been a really interesting factor in the latter part of the race. We also didn't see Jay Shepherd at all in the second race of the night, so he's clearly had some sort of technical issues to take him out, but really well deserved double victory there for Richard Towler.